incoming sound is speeding. Avi, take it away.
What's up, everyone? We are here in College Prep's brand new media studio to have our first edition of Faculty Conversations. My name is Avi Paulson, and I'm a senior here at College Prep, and I'm joined by our very own Bosky Frederick. Bosky's been teaching math at College Prep for 51 years, and I'm going to ask him a series of questions to learn more about College Prep's history. Bosky, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure.
So I'm going to start you off with a bit of a challenging question. Across all your time here at the school, what is your favorite memory?
Well, I have a couple. It came to mind quickly. One, we used to have chapels, which led into assemblies. I guess in the early days it was a little more religious than it is now. And faculty members or students, whoever, could get up and present something like we do in an assembly. And I did something about the Greek alphabet, where I was going through the letters, and I had a series of cards which then unfolded and went down, as I said, alpha, beta, gamma, and the audience roared, and I felt really good about that. The other one was math related, where a student was in the class and we were talking about whatever, and I could see him inching his way back towards this glass door that went out to a panel, which happened out to a patio, which was open. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I looked and he was gone. And so I said, okay. And I taught the class some other information about a math concept. And the next day I gave him a pop quiz on it, and he complained that we hadn't taught him that. And I said, yes, we did. That was when you snuck out. And I felt, like I was a real teacher then.
Yeah, you probably thought you got away with that.
He probably did.
So obviously a lot has changed from 50 years ago. We have a new administration, new teachers, new students, and we're even on a new campus. But I was wondering, across your time here, what has stayed the same?
Well, actually, the classroom size has pretty much stayed the same. Mm-hmm. It's still like 16 students max, although that gets changed once in a while. And students are still pretty much engaged, which is good. I would say, having assemblies has been the same. For the faculty, having a free lunch, that's been the same. I guess the general attitude, well, in a private school, you've got a certain kind of set of the way you operate, and that hasn't changed a whole lot.
Yeah. Was the free lunch like a major selling point on you working here?
No, just having a job was the main selling point for that.
Okay. So that sort of leads into my next question, which is, what are some major changes that?
Well, as you mentioned, changing to the new campus,
Right.
that was a big thing. That happened in 82, 83. I was supposed to start in 82, but delays from construction caused it to be in 83.
Uh-huh.
And of course, the campus size, the student body size kept growing, and so did the faculty size. So when I started, it was like 127 students, and now it's like 364.
Yeah.
So, but it's not going to keep on growing. There's a legal limit we have for this area. Let's see, mathematically, so math-wise, the biggest change, I think, was when computers started coming along. Because before we did use textbooks, and now computers allowed us to create our own text and do handout sheets easily and so forth. So it did change the way we taught math. You could make it more individualized in a way. Group work started. I think in the mid-'80s we started working that way, and that was different from all lecture sort of thing. So it's more student-centered, I guess, than just teacher-centered teaching. Let's see, there were a number of, there didn't used to be senior mentors or senior advisors. That was something Ina Resch started to try to get the seniors and ninth graders more on the same page, or get the ninth graders more introduced to school. Yeah. Let's see, well, obviously interterm was started. Snow trips have been happening for way back. There were some, smaller things. A digital camera comes along, so now everybody has a camera, whereas before very few people had cameras, and so getting photographs were tough. I started doing the mug sheet. At first they did Polaroids. Yeah, they did Polaroids and just posted them on a big board outside the main office to see who's who, but now the mug sheet is much easier for people to use.
Yeah. Well, most of those seem like positive changes, definitely the group work and snow trip. I don't know as much about the mug sheet. I know a lot of ninth graders don't really appreciate that one too much, but I was
The teachers
wondering
appreciate it, though.
the teachers appreciate it. I was wondering if there's anything that you like really miss from College Prep's early days.
Well, there was a certain, in the old campus, which became cramped, there was a certain closeness to it that we don't quite have
Yeah.
here. There was a certain feeling of challenge and conquering to be able to put up with those conditions and still learn and so
Yeah,
forth.
yeah.
So I wouldn't say I really missed that exactly, but it was something that felt a little different. Let's see, there were things that I didn't miss.
What are some of those?
I don't miss particular the hours and hours in the dark room doing
Okay.
chemical photography, developing negatives, printing pictures, because very few people had cameras and you couldn't send them out. That was too expensive back then.
Yeah.
Back then, school was not rolling in dough, not that we're that way now necessarily, but we have good facilities, and back then, not so much.
Mhm.
So I spent a lot of time, getting pictures for the yearbook staff to then
Yeah.
decide to use and so forth.
Yeah.
And so I took a lot of pictures myself. And then, in the old campus, the dark room was basically a broom closet. And so it was really cramped and hard to
Yeah.
work. So,
And
Let's-
back when you were doing yearbook, was it just you, or did you have a group of students also?
oh yeah, there were students. Math department, yearbook should be in either the art department or the English department. In fact, the guy
Yeah.
ahead of me was in the English department.
Yeah.
But he left the school, and then Mr. Baldwin was looking for somebody to do it. And I had been taking pictures for scouts and stuff, so I knew the photography. I knew nothing about yearbooks. But fortunately, the student editors, they knew about it, so they held that part. I just really supported the photography part.
Uh-huh. So you mentioned scouts. I know that along with being a teacher for many years, you were a scoutmaster for many years, and you're still involved with your scout troop. So I was wondering sort of what strategies in teaching could be translated or carried over between teaching in math classroom and teaching out with your scout troop.
Well, I think the basic idea of being observant and listening and having patience to deal with kids, those translate both ways. In Scouts, you do they work on awards and stuff, so there's a certain amount of teaching. Hopefully, the older kids do the teaching to the younger kids, but you're there kind of overseeing all that. In the same way that in the classroom here, now in particular, we try to have students, in their group teach each other as they can, because you learn by teaching. So if they have to explain something, then it might get through better than having the teacher explain it to somebody. So,
Yeah.
you want all kinds of different avenues for that to work. Those are probably the biggest things.
So this question sort of goes back to things that have not changed. Anyone that's seen you walking around campus has probably seen your backpack or your binder. Your binder's right here. And these two items you've had for a very long time. And I was sort of just wondering, like, what's in the binder and why have you kept it for so long, or what's special about it?
Well, the main reason I still have it, because if it ain't broke, you don't have to fix it. Although I've certainly retaped it and stuff.
Yeah.
If these things did cross over or something like that, if those
Right.
were broken, we get a new one. And I have other binders, obviously. So as far as what's in it, there's all kinds of stuff. Besides math, there's student council stuff in it. Early on, when we had student council, I asked Mr. Baldwin, I said, wouldn't it be an idea for some adult to be sitting in as a sounding board in student council? So if they
Yeah.
had a question about something, rather they get a quick answer rather than having to wait till Mr. Baldwin was free or something. And he said, yeah, that's a good idea. Why don't you do that?
Yeah.
And so I sat in on student council meetings, and as I did that, I started writing down who was in each grade level. And so on one of the dividers in here, I can jump to the right one, right there's a list of student council people over the years.
Wow.
And so, and then when I started doing the yearbook, then it was a matter of needing information. And so I had information there about that. As I took pictures, you needed to know what it was all about.
Yeah.
And across the board, kind of what was all the things that school was involved in. And so I took notes on things. I've kind of always taken notes, but
Yeah.
I was forced to do even more of it.
Yeah.
as far as after I've kept it for a long time, then finally decided that now it's a thing. In fact, there was one back to school day where I guess I had talked to the class about it or something, or they asked about it, and I told them, and then some parent came up and said, "Is that it?" I said, yeah. You want to see it?
Yeah. So I feel like you've sort of become like College Prep's historian with this binder, with all the intensive notes and pictures that you've taken. Is that sort of a role that you just sort of fell into accidentally, or is that something you sought out?
It kind of came along with this. I was doing it, and then it seemed like an obvious thing to keep on doing as far as listing things, even after. There was no dean of student until Andy Deaton came along in the late 70s, I guess, and then but it was just a matter of keeping track of stuff so that there was records. And I have gone further. I've tried to go back to all yearbooks and look and make a master list of all the faculty that have ever been here, when they started, when they left, that sort of stuff. And then also pictures of them, kind of. So that part I took on myself. I decided, well, wouldn't it be good to have a record like that?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people will really enjoy looking back on that stuff in the future.
Yeah.
So I'm 18 now. I'm going to go to college soon. And imagining doing something for 50 years of my life just seems kind of crazy. So I was wondering if, like, when you started teaching at College Prep, you knew that, like, that was it. This is what you want to spend the rest of your life doing, or if it was sort of just every year you kept deciding.
Well, I didn't think of it as the rest of my life necessarily, but I knew I was going to do it for a while.
Yeah.
I intended, when I left high school, I intended to teach.
Yeah.
That wasn't available immediately, though. Mm-hmm. So then, as time went on, when I became retirement age, I said, well, I can't think of anything better to do. So I'm happy that they will still have me, even though I'm just half time now, which makes it less expensive for them also, being here a long time.
Yeah.
So no, I didn't really ever think I was going to stop. Sometime obviously I will. When I get to a point where I really can't function enough to do it justice, then I'll say, okay, I guess I'm out of here. But I can also come back and be a sub. I can also go watch a drama production.
I can keep taking the pictures and notes. Definitely. So my next question goes in a slightly different direction. I remember in June of 2015 exactly where I was when gay marriage was legalized. I was wondering if you have any specific memories from teaching in a classroom or being at school during major historical events.
Well, the first event that came to mind was the 1973 oil crisis, where gasoline was getting expensive and there were long lines and so forth. And so since I ride a bike a lot, I didn't use up gas too quickly, but I still needed to get gas one day. And so I took my car to school, and during lunch, I got in the line, which was out in front of the school because there was a gas station just down there, and I just waited until my turn came. Well, one of my students saw me there. He went into the faculty room, got me lunch, and brought it out to me. Wow. So I had lunch while I was waiting in line. 1989, the earthquake, Loma Prieta, that was pretty scary. Yep. The school survived that. There wasn't too much around here, except there was a lot of trauma in the area, and people were scared and so forth. 1991, the Hills Fire was a big deal around here because that singed the back of campus, and drama students who were here probably saved part of the campus back then. And there were families here that lived up in burned areas, and they had lost their houses. So there was a period. I think we skipped school for 3 days because it wasn't safe to come back. And then there was lots of CPS day type cleanup jobs that were happening all around campus and stuff. And then there were also assemblies and space for people who had lost either lives or mostly property, and for this school's case, to get together and talk and work things through and grieve and so forth. Mm-hmm. Let's see, of course, 9/11, 2001 was a big deal too, and I remember hearing about it just as I was leaving for school. I came to school, and they had an assembly, I think, to talk about it, and they had a TV going for updating, because some families had relatives back there, and so they were being impacted. Mm-hmm. And so there was an option of going to class or not, no problem if you didn't want it to. If you wanted to go to a room where there were counselors or people who could, let you chill or talk through things or whatever. So that was a big deal.
Yeah. And do you think those were like really times that brought the community together?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I also had a question to follow up to the earthquake. I know that people are probably wondering, are you more of an A's fan or a Giants fan? 'Cause that was during, that's famously during the Bay Bridge series.
Well, I live closer to the A's, so I guess maybe the A's.
Okay. Well, that's the right answer.
But okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so myself, along with a bunch of the seniors, are going to be embarking on our snow trip in a couple weeks. I know that you've been very involved with the snow trip for many years, so I was sort of wondering what the snow trip used to look like and how it's changed and sort of what your involvement in that has been.
Okay, well, when I first started at CPS in '72, a student came up to me and said, "Do you ski?"
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Yeah, I know how to ski. I'm not a great skier." And they were looking for chaperones because I guess on the previous trip, I don't know exactly what happened, but something was harder on the chaperones, and some people said, "I'm not doing that again." So he was looking for new people. So, and I was happy to go. I thought it was a great trip to do that. Back then, the whole school went. It was 2 buses. It slowly crept up to eventually 7 buses, which was crazy. At first, they went to Squaw Valley, which is now Palisades, I guess.
Yes.
And then in '88, they changed over to Bear Valley because Andy Dean, who was Dean of Students before Shabon, said we need more community because the Bear Valley Lodge had a good meeting space and so forth. So it evolved. There were more times than not it was good, but there were times when it was pretty challenging. There were 2 times, 1980 and 1990, when after room check people were missing. This is 11 o'clock, and then where were they? What had happened? I don't know how much details you want about this. Maybe these shouldn't be recorded anyway. But they were eventually found, and it wasn't a big problem. But in 1980, we were up till like 1:30 in the morning. We had woken Mr. Baldwin up and said, what do we do? And he said, well, eventually I guess we get the sheriff. But just before we were about to do that, his roommate came back and said, he's back. And that also led to lots better room check methods and so forth. There are also a lot of things to do with safety that we kind of invented along the way. I remember on one of the earlier trips, kids would bring cash, and Mr. Baldwin was walking back from the tram area where he bought the tickets, and they were all rushing and waving their money, wanted to get their tickets so they can get on the slopes. I said, well, this is madness. Let's sit down at a table and organize it. Can we have them have credit so they don't have to bring cash and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
And starting the sign-out system and all those things that you'll hear about tomorrow from Shabon.
Are you joining us this year?
I am. I don't ski anymore because my knees are shot. But this will be number 47 for me. So it's just been a good thing over here. There's been problems with buses before. There've been some problems with behavior, problems with too much snow, not enough snow, accidents, not accidents. So it all varies. But it's a good event.
All right. Well, thank you for that. I have a quick aside. Did people refer to Andy Dean as Dean Andy Dean?
Lots of times Dean.
Okay.
So they didn't tend to use Andy, but they would use.
I see. I feel like that's just a perfect name for the position.
Yes, it was. It was.
So aside from snow trip, we also have this great thing called interterm, and I know that you were sort of instrumental in that as well. So if you wanted, and I know you also led an animation interterm for many years. So
Yeah.
if you want to talk about that.
So I didn't start interterm, but I was there at the start. In 1978, school was thinking about, we ought to do, some other schools in the area had been doing something like this, and they said we ought to have some other program that's a little different where you get to see your students at a different level and so forth. So it was between terms back then. They took 3 weeks off between Christmas and New Year's, and then the next week it was 2 weeks, and the week after that, next year after that was 1 week, because giving up 3 weeks of teaching time was too much.
Yeah.
So it was in the fall at first, and then it moved to the spring. In '82, when we were moving to this campus, our interterm for that year was spending 3 days moving everything from the old campus over here.
Mm-hmm.
So that was That was that thing.
Was that the students and teachers?
Oh yeah, that was everybody. They had all kinds of stuff.
You guys didn't get movers? Just...
Oh, no, because CPS had just spent big bucks to get to this place, and so we were all the hired help, so to speak.
Yeah. Where was the old campus?
It was on Claremont, just about at College, right across from the Safeway there.
Okay.
There's a big insurance building there now or something. But I still actually ride my bike by that going up here. It's a 6-minute ride versus a 13-minute ride now. So let's see, other things. Yeah, I did animation forever, except in 1988, Speck Rosekrantz, who was a student of mine, who actually then came back and taught math with me later, which was really crazy.
Yeah.
He said, I need more chaperones for my raft trip. And so that year I did that. There was also a little bit of engineering in the early years. And let's see, eventually it switched over to, it used to be a morning session and an afternoon session. Now it's an all-day session of the same thing. And that started in, 2015 or something.
And when did the trips start? Or were they always a thing?
There was always some trips for that. And that depended upon, again, faculty and so forth. Early on, I don't think there were too many trips, but then that became, more of a thing to do.
So you mentioned your biking. I was wondering if you have any bike stories from your many trips to and from school.
Yeah, well, actually, there are several. I had an old 1-speed, actually, which I rode to the old campus. And one day I came out and it was gone. It turns out they had decided to put it on the roof as a joke. And I was in a hurry, unfortunately. Anyway, I got it back down.
Yeah.
Then there's kids in the scout troop. There are actually 5 kids at CPS in the early years that were actually in the scout troop. In fact, that's actually how I got started here, because one of the parents suggested. And they gave me a 10-speed. So, but the biggest thing was in 2007, riding to this campus, I had a bike accident. I took out my front 4 teeth. I have a big scar right here, which you can't see too well. So these are all crowns. So it's expensive, but you got to watch where you're going. It was pilot error. I was not paying enough attention. I had this accident.
So you actually just reminded me when you talked about the bike on the roof. I think as a senior grade, we have to sort of start getting our thoughts, start thinking about a senior prank. So what are some of the best senior pranks you've seen?
Now, I don't know if we want these. Let's see. There was one, I have a picture of it, actually, Arpad Molnar, who was chairman of the Board of Trustees for a year. I think it was 87. They basically made the courtyard a jungle. They had all this netting over the top of it. It was very, very involved and stuff. And one time they actually blocked the driveway with cars, which is a no-no, because fire engines, if they had to come through, they'd just plow through them, sort of stuff. And so I think as time went on, the dean of students kind of watched and said, these are things you can do, these are things you can't do.
Yeah.
And those other days they had to come back and it took forever to clean everything up, and that was not fun for them necessarily. So, but most of the time it's been pretty sane. Occasionally people go off and make some bad comments about people and post stuff, but lately it's been mature, I would say.
Yeah.
With exceptions.
I have a couple ideas, but I don't want to divulge too much of that right now. But I'll come out in due time.
Well, I'm not the dean of students, so I don't care.
Well, that's about it for the questions I have. But do you have anything you'd like to say to the people before we close it out?
Well, this is a special school. That's partly why I'm still here, because the people, faculty, the students, discipline is not a big problem here, so it's easy. It's not that it's not work. It's a lot of work to make this all happen. But I would say take advantage of all the facilities here, all the people here, all the different programs you can try out. Here you can try it kind of for free, and it might decide where your life work is going. And so, don't be shy about getting involved in stuff, and enjoy.
Well, thank you so much again for joining us. Once again, I'm Avi Paulson. This is Bosky Frederick, and that was our very first faculty conversations.